Hello, I'm Caitlin Huey-Burns in Washington, in for Major Garrett tonight. Welcome to The Takeout and happy Friday. We have learned today that the Trump administration has ended Secret Service protection for Kamala Harris, the former vice president and one-time political rival of the president. While presidents receive Secret Service protection for life, vice presidents, by law, typically receive it for only 6 months after leaving office, as was the case with Mike Pence in 2021. But early in January of this year, then outgoing President Joe Biden signed an executive order to extend Harris's detail to 18 months once she departed office. Well, today, the White House has instructed the Department of Homeland Security to rescind that detail, effective starting Monday. Sources tell CBS News that the Secret Service ran a threat assessment of Harris and found nothing to warrant an extension. Nancy Cordes joins me now from the White House for more on all of this. Nancy, great to see you. I know it's a busy day there today. We're talking about the former administration protection. Can you just walk us through what we should take away from this news today? Is it that abnormal? What should we read into it?
Well, by law, Caitlin, former vice presidents are entitled to 6 months of Secret Service protection after they leave office. And in this case, President Biden, before he left in January, he granted the vice president another year, which is not unusual. These terms of Secret Service protection get elongated all the time. For example, back when Biden took office, he extended the Secret Service protections for a number of Trump family members well beyond the allotted time that they were entitled to. Also extended Secret Service protection for various former officials who were facing some kind of security threat from either domestic sources or from some foreign operation. And so it's not unusual for these terms to get extended, certainly not unusual in the case of Kamala Harris, who, after all, was not just vice president, but then went on to become the presidential candidate, losing her battle against President Trump. So it was a bit surprising today when we learned that the White House was terminating her Secret Service protection at the original 6-month time frame. It's certainly in line with some other vice presidents in the past, but they definitely went that extra step. And they said that they had the Secret Service look into this and that she wasn't facing any extraordinary threat. And so they were going to go ahead and remove it.
And it will be interesting, Nancy, because we will likely see more of Kamala Harris out in public. She has a book tour coming up, so we'll see kind of what that all looks like. But, you know, not to read too much into it, but Trump also has revoked Secret Service clearances and protections for people that he doesn't necessarily like. I'm thinking of John Bolton, members of Joe Biden's family. Has the White House talked about this today? Are they just kind of leaving it with the statement from the Secret Service?
Administration sources have made it clear that this doesn't have anything to do with any personal animosity towards the former vice president. They say that this is simply a matter of the fact that it's been determined that there are no extraordinary threats facing her, but certainly the fact that they went to these lengths to ensure that the Secret Service protection was removed. It is a bit unusual, especially after it had been granted by a former president. And you're right, she is about to embark on a book tour later in September, which means that she's probably going to end up spending more on security than she originally intended. But we've spoken to her team as well. They are not criticizing this decision, at least not publicly. They simply put out a very brief statement saying that she appreciates the protection that she has received from the Secret Service over the past 5 years.
All right, Nancy, important context there. Thank you so much for your reporting. We appreciate it. And CBS News national security contributor Samantha Vinograd joins me now for more on this. So, Sam, I mean, we mentioned that vice presidents get 6 months. That is typical. But I'm wondering what you're making of what we're learning today.
Well, to be clear, the law indicates that presidents and their children under the ages of 16 get a lifetime of Secret Service support. under the Biden administration, we actually provided ongoing support to President Trump's adult children, as well as several former cabinet members and other government officials for an extenuated period of time based on the threat environment. And I want to stress that so much of this should be about the threat environment itself. We know that former Vice President Kamala Harris faced a slew of threats dating back to when she was first named as vice president, and then her tenure as vice president, her tenure as a presidential candidate. Those threats certainly picked up. And so when President Biden extended her Secret Service detail beyond that 6-month mark that former vice presidents get, it was based on a threat assessment. What typically happens is U.S. Secret Service presents the Secretary of Homeland Security with a threat assessment on a protectee that lays out the ranges of threats that are facing that person, foreign and domestic, and then the Secretary of Homeland Security can make a determination. We understand that that package, as we call it, was presented to the Secretary, and I believe there were no reportedly specific and credible threats to the former Vice President. That is a little hard to understand based upon the previous history of threats against her, but the Secret Service is incredibly professional, and if the Homeland Security committees in Congress want to ask for more information, I think they should.
And can this change at all if there is a heightened threat against someone? Can the president, the administration extend that back to her or back to anybody who asks for it?
I don't think they can do it to anybody who asks for it, but I do think that the president and the Secretary of Homeland Security have certain discretion when it comes to the U.S. Secret Service posture. But one thing I really want to stress for our viewers is when we think of the Secret Service, we think about a lot of individuals with guns protecting a person. That is a huge piece of it. So as former Vice President Harris is on her book trip, if she still had protection, she'd have a bunch of people physically protecting her in all of those known stops that anyone who wants to do her harm knows where she's going to be. The U.S. Secret Service for protectee also provides continuous monitoring of threats via intelligence sources and other information. So former Vice President Harris is losing that too, which could be a problem.
So kind of recon work or preparing for any
gathering, information gathering, intelligence and information sharing with state and local partners. So she'll be missing out on that too.
And then, I am curious about why we're finding out about this. Is it typical to announce something like this?
In this environment, I think that if that Secret Service protection just disappeared all at once, that would also raise a lot of eyebrows. It's such a visible thing to roll in with the Secret Service presence. And so I do think that talking about this publicly is important so that people aren't caught by surprise. But I also think that there are certainly questions about why individuals with whom President Trump has personal grievances with are losing their security protections while the threat environment stays so volatile. So again, if Congress has questions, I think that they could question the U.S. Secret Service Director or Secretary Noem herself.
And it comes at a time that members of Congress have been concerned about their own security as well. So the threat assessment for lots of public officials remains unfortunately high. Sam, I learned a lot from this conversation.
Thanks,
I hope our audience did too. Thank you very much for your expertise.